We all have questions about why people do the things they do. But how do we get from just a hunch to a real, solid answer? Well, it's not some kind of magic, right? It's a method. Today, we're going to open up the psychologist's toolkit and see how they find out what really makes us tick.
So let's start, not with some dry definition, but with a question I bet you've asked yourself before. We've all heard the saying, but is there any truth to it? Does giving something away actually make us happier than getting something for ourselves? And what's so cool is that this isn't just some philosophical debate anymore. Researchers literally put this to the test. They gave a bunch of students some money with one of two instructions: go spend this on yourself or go spend it on someone else. And the results? Wow, they were super clear. The group that spent the money on others reported being way happier at the end of the day. Okay, so how in the world do psychologists go from a simple question like that to a concrete finding? It's not like they just, guess. They follow a very structured, step-by-step blueprint. Let's break down the 5 steps they use to turn plain old curiosity into actual knowledge. This whole process is called the scientific method. It all kicks off with an observation, like just noticing that we feel kind of good after giving someone a gift. From there, you form a testable prediction, what we call a hypothesis. Something like spending money on others will make people happier. Then you design a study to test it, you look at the data, you draw your conclusions, and you see how it all fits into the bigger picture. It's this awesome, continuous cycle of questioning and discovery.
Now, that whole cycle usually starts with a theory. And a theory is just the big guiding idea. It's a broad explanation for why things happen the way they do. For instance, a huge theory in psychology is that one of our most basic human needs is to feel connected, to belong to a group. It's a really big idea that could explain tons of our behaviors, including why giving might feel so darn good.
So you've got this giant theory, but you can't really test a giant idea directly. You have to get specific. And that's where a hypothesis comes in. It's an educated guess, a prediction that flows right out of the theory. So if our big theory is that social connection is key, then a good hypothesis might be people who do something for someone else will report being happier than people who don't. See that? It takes the big, broad idea and shrinks it down to something we can actually go out and test.
But wait a minute, how do you measure happiness? I mean, it's kind of fuzzy, right? This is where something called an operational definition becomes absolutely crucial. It basically forces you to decide exactly how you're going to measure these abstract concepts. So for happiness, you could say, okay, we're going to measure it by their score on this 10-point satisfaction survey. Or you could measure it by looking for a Duchenne smile in a photo. That's that real, genuine smile that makes your eyes crinkle. The point is, you have to make the abstract concrete and measurable.
Okay, so we've got our testable hypothesis, check. We have a clear way to measure everything, check. Now what? Well, how do we actually go about investigating it? It turns out psychologists have 3 main tools in their kit, and each one is good for different things.
First up, we have correlational research. This is all about looking for relationships, for patterns. It just asks, as one thing in the world changes, what does another thing do? For example, is there a link between how many hours a week you exercise and how well you sleep? This method is fantastic for spotting connections. But here's the thing. You see headlines based on this kind of research all the time. Scientists link video games to bad grades. They're designed to grab your attention, and they always sound like one thing is causing the other, when really the study only found that the two things are connected somehow. And this brings us to what might be the single most important rule in all of psychology. If you remember one thing from this whole explainer, make it this. Say it with me. Correlation does not equal causation. Just because two things move together, it absolutely positively does not mean that one caused the other. So why not? Well, it's because of something called the third variable problem. And this is the perfect example. The data shows a really strong correlation between ice cream sales and crime rates. So, does eating ice cream make people go on a crime spree? Of course not. There's a third variable, hot weather, that's causing both. When it's hot, more people buy ice cream, and more people are outside getting irritated, which can lead to more crime. The heat is the real cause. So if you want to really prove, that one thing causes another, you have to pull out the most powerful tool in the psychologist's entire kit, the experiment. This is the only way to really get at cause and effect. So what's the big difference here? Well, correlational research is passive. It just observes things that are already happening. But an experiment, it's active. The researcher actually goes in and changes something on purpose. They manipulate one variable, and they use random assignment to make sure their groups are equal. This lets them isolate the one thing they changed so they can see its direct effect.
In an experiment, that thing the researcher is actively messing with, the thing they change on purpose, that's called the independent variable. You can think of it as the potential cause. So in our study about giving money away, the independent variable was the instruction, spend it on you or spend it on someone else.
And the outcome they measure to see if their meddling actually did anything? That's the dependent variable. It's the effect. Its value, you could say, depends on what happened with the independent variable. So in that same study, the dependent variable was pretty simple. It was how happy people said they were at the end of the day.
Okay, so having these incredible tools to figure out cause and effect is one thing, but using them responsibly, well, that's a whole other ballgame. This kind of research involves real human beings, so it comes with a very serious set of ethical rules.
To make sure nobody gets hurt, psychologists have to follow these super strict guidelines. Stuff like informed consent, which just means you know exactly what you're signing up for. Confidentiality, so your personal data stays private. Debriefing, where they explain the whole study to you afterward. And they can only use deception if it's absolutely necessary and totally harmless. It's all about protecting the people who make the science possible.
But being responsible also means looking at the history of our own tools. And this is a tough one, but it's important. Many of the basic statistical tests that psychologists use every single day were created by men who are also eugenicists, men who are actively trying to use science to prove white supremacy. It's a really troubling history, and it forces us to ask a hard question. Can a tool ever be truly separate from the biased values of the person who created it?
All right, let's bring this all home. Let's look at how this entire process, from just noticing something to testing it ethically to reaching a powerful conclusion, can come together in a way that you can actually use in your own life. So this research by James Pennebaker started with a really sad observation, a correlation. He noticed that people who had lost a spouse to suicide and who never talked about it seemed to get physically sick more often. So he designed an experiment. He had students get randomly assigned to either write about their deepest, most traumatic experiences or just write about something neutral. And the results? It was a stunning causal conclusion. The simple act of writing about deep emotions caused real, measurable improvements in their physical health. And that right there, that is the perfect picture of the scientific method in action. You see the whole journey. It starts with a pattern in the real world, moves to a controlled experiment to nail down the cause, and it ends with a practical tool that can actually help improve our lives.
So see, understanding this method isn't just some boring academic thing. It's empowering. It shows you how we build knowledge brick by brick from a simple question to a powerful answer. Pennebaker's work proved that putting our stories into words can be a form of healing. Which kind of leaves us with one last question for you to think about. What story do you need to write?